This video is sponsored by Factor. Get 50% off your first order by using my promo code CHARI50. When you've been making videos for a living for almost a decade now, you're bound to make friends that also make videos for a living. And when you have friends, you typically talk about stuff like, life, goals, work. And when my friends and I talk about work, we usually catch up on what brands everybody's working with. So when I brought up the fact that I was doing an ad for Factor, I was met with basically universal praise, which was really exciting. Factor is a meal prep service that delivers straight to your doorstep. With fresh, never frozen, dietitian-approved meals and drinks, you can count on Factor for fast, tasty meals that fit your lifestyle. For example, I get really busy during the fall season, what with every game company and their grandma deciding to release big games around this time. I have to play through the game while recording it, I have to write the script, I have to record my voice, I have to edit, I have to meet deadlines, and I still spend time with my family on top of all that, leaving me with very little time to think about what food I'm gonna make for that week. That's where Factor comes in. Their meals are ready in minutes and there is very little cleanup involved. With keto, calorie smart, chef's choice, and vegan veggie options, you can totally find a meal plan that works for you, saving trips to the grocery store and the time spent on finding ingredients you need on top of that. Meal plans range from 4 to 18 meals a week, and you can easily add or reduce the number depending on how you're feeling. Plus, you can easily skip a week if you need to. While I was recording this, I was getting kinda thirsty, and I forgot that Factor does drinks as well, so when I opened them up and saw the pineapple, turmeric, basil juice, I got a little excited because I love fruit juice. And even though I got a little ahead of myself with the drink, I did have their sun-dried tomato chicken for lunch, which included zucchini noodles on the side. Pretty good. If you'd like the peace of mind of knowing you have a tasty meal ready to go when you need it, head on over to factor75.com or click the link in the description and use my code CHARI50 for 50% off your first order. That's CHA, 2 R's, 3 I's, and a 50, like my username but with a 0 at the end, to get half off your first Factor box. Thank you again to Factor for sponsoring this video. Okay, on with the show. So, when this update was announced, I assumed that it would be a side story or additional scenario to complement the base game. As it turns out, what they call another story is technically an alternate climax to the events in the original Frontiers, and we access another story by way of a warp ring that spawns on Uranus Island in the base game, complete with a cinematic of Sonic preparing to and ultimately entering it, followed by a cutscene where he shows up on this new version of the island from that warp ring he entered. My question is, did he enter the warp ring out of habit? Was he not confused when he entered a warp ring that spit him out on the same island he was just on? I understand why this had to be handled this way from a game standpoint, so that anyone in the middle of making their way through the final island wouldn't lose their progress with this update, but they went out of their way to show that this was possible through the warp ring. Is this an alternate timeline?
Moments ago, your friends sacrificed their corporeal forms to suppress your cyber corruption and return you to this dimensional plane.
They were so close to being free again, and they gave it all up for me. I don't care how many islands or titans it takes, I'm getting them back this time.
Please, no tedious speeches about the superpower of teamwork.
Hey, that's my line!
Of my millions of calculations, there was one so remote and unlikely I did not consider it. However, as things stand, it could be the one to save us all.
I thought that Sonic survival was the 1 in a million plan. Hold on, another story starts off right after we finish Rhea Island, where Amy, Knuckles, and Tails give themselves up to cure Sonic's cyber corruption. Everyone was there on top of the final tower when Sonic got corrupted. Why didn't you bring up the fact that you had a plan to Sonic back then?
I can reverse your friends' efforts and restore them. They would then seek out the Chaos Emeralds for us. I can stabilize your cyber corruption for a brief time, and then I would guide you on how to convert that corruption into power so that you may end this conflict and save Father.
Wait, so you can stave off the cyber corruption for a little bit and restore the sacrifice Sonic's friends just made? Not only does that make that earlier scene on the tower virtually meaningless, but if you could do that and you knew that Sonic and his friends were the only remote chance you had at defeating whatever's escaping from cyberspace, why didn't you just do it then? Why did you wait for us to be on this island to even bring it up?
Let's do it to it.
Be forewarned, the trials you face will be grueling, and we will have precious little time.
That last part is a lie. There is no time limit, and another story is in fact quite beefy when it comes to content. You could probably finish Sonic Forces 5 whole times before doing everything there is to do in this update. My point is, Sage is wrong. We have precious lots of time.
Please. I live for time trials. Let's go already.
Boo! Get off the stage! Well, playing through this update, I came to realize that Frontiers is probably the first Sonic game that really embraces the jank and is made all the more fun for it. While there are definitely moments where it can really screw you over, and there are still some automated sections here and there, particularly in the cyberspace stages, you're very free to do whatever you want, whenever you want to do it. That being said, when it comes to Sonic himself, his challenges are designed around his movement, so it's not easy to cheese your way through certain parts of the game. Amy, Knuckles, and Tails, however, are a completely different story, because even though their challenges are specifically designed with their unique movesets in mind, all three of them also have abilities that allow them to bypass half, if not most, of the challenges set for them. Amy, for example, has what I like to call gigantic ups, because not only does she naturally have a triple jump that allows her to gently glide, but one of her skill tree abilities is the high card jump, which is a bounce that you can then triple jump out of, turning them into ginormous ups. Do I think using these characters as broken movesets make the game ultimately more fun to play? Absolutely I do, but it would be remiss of me to not acknowledge that it is a design flaw that does make their challenges a bit superfluous. Letting players beat a platforming challenge however they want despite there being an intended way? Awesome, it can show how well something is designed. Letting them ignore the challenge altogether? Yeah, you probably didn't think that one through. Ah yes, my favorite Amy move, the card spin boost, where her fortune cards spin around her in a circle while she rides her Pico Pico hammer like a broomstick. Truly a classic.
Maybe I can get some insight with my fortune cards. Huh. Ugh. Ooh. All the cards are telling me is that things are obscured and danger approaches. I knew that already. Wait, seek insight from unfamiliar places?
Is that what one of the cards said? You didn't read it out loud when you saw it, so I can only assume that's what it was, otherwise you're just saying random convenient shit.
Oh, forget the vaults. I'll find them the old-fashioned way.
Okay, you go on ahead and do that, Knuckles, but every time the emeralds are lost on these islands, they end up in vaults, so I don't know where you expect to find them. So this update and even the base game have a weird trend of repeating the same thing over and over again, and with the final horizon, it starts with the Elder and Hermit Coco. Amy is meant to seek them both out and ask what happened to the Chaos Emeralds, and they both essentially give the same answer. They were hidden from the Big Bad by using the Ancients' technology. I'm guessing that in-game they're actually telling Amy where they are exactly, but to us it just seems like Amy gets told the same thing by two different people, leaves without having learned anything, and thanks them for their insight even though all they said was that they're hidden, which is not a great answer to the question, where are they? If I had a nickel for every time there was a Sonic game where you could also play as Amy, Knuckles, and Tails, where the gameplay style is combat-oriented and a female AI helps us learn about a civilization known as the Ancients, where Knuckles has an infinite jump exploit, I would have 2 nickels. Which isn't a lot, but oh my god, you cannot make this shit up. I was going around the island collecting a bunch of skill point Coco so I could unlock all the abilities in each character's skill tree so I could activate as many map Coco as I could to complete the map quickly. That often involved going into my map and marking a skill point Coco for me to go to, especially if it was close by. And I came across these sets of pillars that you're meant to climb as Knuckles and use your Psi Knuckles skill to reveal more pillars. I thought that maybe completing the challenge would reward me the skill point Coco, but I activated all the Psi Knuckle markers and nothing happened. I'd glide away, the puzzle would reset, I'd do it again, and nothing. Maybe I was missing a step or doing something wrong, but I never found the skill point Coco around here, and I literally have no other idea as to what I would have needed to do here.
How's it going, treasure hunter?
Didn't expect to find you standing around wasting time.
I was starting to get worried you wouldn't be able to find the emeralds.
Then you are wasting time if you're worrying about me.
You want to talk about wasting time? That was somehow the most uneventful conversation in this entire game.
Don't you think I could have been more helpful to Sonic if I had my normal body back?
For sure. In this digitized state, there's a limit to how much we can affect the real world.
Is there? Because you guys seem to be interacting with the world pretty normally. You've even been able to keep all your weapons.
When I scanned the skies earlier, I detected a similar reading in the ruins. Maybe there's something in the air.
That would be a satellite placed in space by the Ancients. There are multiple satellites positioned over a wide area.
Well, we've been to space many times throughout the history of this series, and I don't think we've seen any of these satellites before. Do other people around the world know they exist? Do they know why they're up there? How far into space are they? So many questions. Remember how I mentioned earlier that each character had an ability that allowed them to bypass half, if not most, of their respective challenges? For Amy, it was the ginormous ups, and for Knuckles, it was his move from Rise of Lyric. For Tails, he has a mech that we haven't seen since Shadow the Hedgehog, the Cyclone, and it is fucking busted. There are a couple of challenges on the island that require the use of it, or that keep in mind that you might have it, but most of them don't, meaning you can just ignore the challenge altogether. Amy's cheese still requires careful and calculated movement and jumping. Knuckles' cheese is admittedly slow and requires a string of inputs to perform, but with Tails, you just press the boost button. Now, granted, you do need to have your ring count maxed out, and the Cyclone can only fly as long as your boost meter allows, so it does have its limitations, which are immediately circumvented by the fact that you can get an infinite number of rings by side-looping in a circle ad nauseum, and can create an infinite boost meter by side-looping an infinity symbol, meaning you can literally fly to anywhere you want on the goddamn island whenever you want to.
There's so much happening on this island. It's beyond my comprehension. It all seems like magic to me.
Here's a word of advice. A scientist shouldn't explain things using the word magic. It's true, there are many things that can't be explained with our current knowledge. The ancients were a technologically advanced civilization. Everything we've seen is nothing more than phenomena that were common at the time. I assure you, there is no such thing as magic on this island.
Bro, you live in a world where fucking rainbow-colored space rocks can turn a blue hedgehog that runs at super speeds yellow and make him invincible, make a black hedgehog that your grandfather created using alien blood slow down time or teleport, and when they combine their powers, they can literally travel through time. And you don't believe there's such a thing as magic? That is somehow one of the most unreasonable things I think you've ever said.
Hey, Tails, cool gadget you got there.
Well, I know I can't fight like you or Knuckles.
Yes, you can. You've done it many times before. We don't just call you Tails because you use them to fly. You've literally used one of them as a hand before. Are you telling me you can't roll them bitches up into fists?
You must be feeling quite anxious, separated from your hero, Sonic.
Eggman, have you forgotten about what happened at Station Square? I may not be Sonic, but there are things only I can do.
We will see what you're capable of without him.
Let's see. Canonically, he beat your Egg Walker in Station Square, built a plane that can transform into a mech that blasted your ass on Prison Island, pretty much made a Chaos Emerald dupe that's unrecognizable from the real thing, built a spaceship, and oh yeah, did I mention the thing where his tails can basically function as hands? Of all the things for Tails to use as part of his arsenal, why does he parry with a spring? Also, I think I found who put all those springs in the middle of those damn forests.
You need to ascend the 4 towers of the Masters. They are memorials to the pilots who gave their lives to save the world.
Pilots? They were who I saw in those visions, right? The ones controlling the Titans?
Yes, the very Titans you destroyed.
Hey, I asked you to explain things from the beginning, remember?
That is irrelevant now.
Oh, sure. Now that we're on the verge of unleashing an interdimensional Lovecraftian destroyer of worlds, suddenly it's irrelevant that you didn't tell us why you were so intent on using the giant alien Gundams against us, but you'll sure as shit give me sass about thrashing them.
It seems your friends have been making progress on the emeralds.
I knew they could handle it.
But there's no time to waste. You must hurry to the tower.
You're right. It's time to get to it.
Wow, what a riveting conversation. I'm so glad that time and resources went into making that optional conversation possible, especially considering that, you know, we already had all this information because it's part of the main storyline.
I never imagined I would have to join forces with you. How dreadful.
Eggman, you've done it multiple times before. Sage even recounted some of those times to you. M119 is such bullshit. I don't normally think these shoot the ball through the hoops challenges are difficult, but this one is so dumb because the platform where the ball spawns is on such uneven terrain that one half set of hoops requires one strategy, the other half requires another, and there's one row of hoops that is angled so awkwardly, I still don't exactly know how you're meant to approach it, but I did it somehow.
I looked into it. It seems the tower only reacts to Sonic.
Huh. So I'm the only one who can activate them. Alright, I'll take care of the towers. Let's do this.
Yeah, we each have a job to do.
Okay, I swear to God, man. None of that information was new to us. We already knew that only Sonic can access the trial towers. We already know that everyone has a specific job they have to do. But you know what we don't know? Why Sonic is the key. Why is it specifically that Sonic has a link with cyberspace? Why is he able to come and go as he pleases? What makes him specifically capable of activating the trial towers? I get it, he's a main character, but for a game where you tried to create a bunch of lore and most of Eggman and Sage's optional conversations involve explaining it, you can't even bother to explain why Sonic's so special? He's just built different?
Did you see the dilapidated bridges and scaffolds around the periphery of Ares Island? The roads and tunnels have broken down over the years, but they were basically highways. Moreover, the highways were full of energy, brimming from underground. The vehicles could replenish energy just by going through tunnels or passing over dash panels.
Wait, so dash panels have existed for tens of thousands of years? I guess that would technically explain why they're all around the world. Did the ancients build them? Did they build all the weird naturally occurring stuff in this world, like the dash rings? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, I guess, but that means that their influence on this world far extended beyond the confines of the Starfall Islands. How have we literally never heard about the ancients before? I was trying to S-rank Portal 4B when this happened. Now, I don't want to repeat this loop, but I sure as shit ran underneath it somehow. So another story raises the game's difficulty not only by way of its puzzles and trials, but through its guardians as well. Every guardian on Uranus Island is an enhanced version of the one in the base game, and they are beefy, especially the caterpillar. Even when it was Psylooped, it didn't seem to take more damage, and when all it gives you is a single portal gear, which you can find more easily by just exploring the island, what the hell incentive do I have to fight your bosses? Portal 4G has a pretty cool gimmick where if you go too fast for too long, you'll get sniped by Cybergun no matter where you are. I think it's pretty cool in retrospect, and only because I eventually understood what was happening. It was a lot less cool when you didn't teach me about this new gimmick and your only hint was a giant speedometer on screen. And the thing is, if you boost during this stage, your speed increases incrementally, like shifting gears on a car. But by the time people play this, they'll most likely have the spin dash, which is faster and particularly useful when it comes to a lot of the ramps you can find in cyberspace. The spin dash doesn't increase its speed over time in this stage like the boost does though. You go from low to top immediately, so I was mega confused when it seemed like I was getting hit by literally nothing and why there was a giant speedometer on screen. Why would making the thing that measures how fast I'm going bigger make me think that I need to go slow so that I don't take damage? The first time it happens, anybody would get confused because there's no correlation between the two concepts. That being said, I do love the new challenges that the portals and another story add, such as collecting lunar medals in a certain time frame, finding alternate exits, collecting numbered rings, and saving a certain number of critters. I think that it adds much needed replay value to cyberspace. But I do have a bit of an issue with the thing about saving the animals. When Sonic picks up a critter, he no longer jumps in a ball because that would be rude, obviously, making his jump height a lot shorter and getting rid of his second jump altogether. Your objective is to drop the animals off at a nearby designated area, which involves doing some precise platforming, the failure of which typically results in a death and having to restart the entire stage, and that's what I take issue with. I'm all for a little challenge, but the rest of the stage expects me to utilize the abilities and physics I've had during the entirety of the game, and more often than not, I can recover from mistakes. But the animal objectives not only change how I'm used to controlling the character, but it then punishes my failure over something I have little experience with by making me have to start all over again. I honestly don't know why there are egg springs on this part of the tower. You're most likely already taking this part slow in order to not fall off the scarily tilted platforms. How and why would anybody bump into them? If you thought people were going to boost through this section, you're out of your goddamn mind. Tower 2 was definitely the one I found most challenging, even on a second playthrough, but part of that difficulty came in the form of homing attack targets, which are meant to allow you to cross certain sections, not respawning once they've been destroyed. Most things, like the balloons, will respawn after a few seconds, but the pink walls are probably meant to stay destroyed so that other challenges around the islands that use them don't get annoying because they're usually in the way of something you'd want to have constant access to. The only way they'll respawn is if you reload your save file, and probably if you run away and come back, but reloading a save is honestly just faster. And you might think that it's intentionally designed that way so that there's more pressure on the player to perform well in a single attempt, not to mention the fact that you can still clear these sections without the pink walls because they're attached to regular ones that you can walk on the edge of if you're careful enough. But that's not exactly an intuitive thing to do. Even if there were balloons there instead of pink walls, this would still be pretty challenging. Why not do that instead of punishing the player for failing at a later part of the tower with a different challenge on a part of the tower they've already completed?
Guess there's a surprise fourth Titan after all. In the vision I saw, you lost to the enemy when you sealed it in your Titan. How are you here?
Well, no, that's pretty fucking important in case the same thing happens to us. Suddenly Sonic heroes.
You'd better not be up to no good just because Sonic's busy.
I, the greatest scientific genius, up to no good. Don't mistake me for some small-time thug who commits crimes on a mere whim.
Says the man who constantly commits crimes the second he thinks it's safe to do so.
Why the cocoa? Actually, that element may change the result of my calculations.
Calculations? You mean the cocoa may be able to help us?
The cocoa contain personal information of the ancients and their souls. If they hold data that hasn't been uploaded to cyberspace yet, maybe
that could be the key. Wow!
Wow. I mean, duh. Didn't we already know this? And even if we didn't, how is that not easily deduced?
Hurry up, or I'll find the emeralds before you.
Wait, Knuckles. Do you have any tips on finding emeralds?
Tips? Just dig everywhere until you find them. That's all there is to it.
I have a hammer, not a shovel. That wasn't very helpful. Looks like I'll need to find them my own way.
Oh my god, these conversations are killing me, dude. I usually love the ones with Sage. I typically don't mind the ones with Eggman, but the ones with the team talking to each other, you can't even call it fan service. It's just a straight up disservice. They never say anything interesting or helpful or meaningful or new to each other.
While I was exploring Kronos Island with Sonic, I noticed lights would appear on the ground or on the trunks of the trees at night. What was up with that?
You must be talking about the phantom lights. Cyberspace is always filled with a vast amount of data, but sometimes it overflows through the portals. That data is the faint thoughts of the ancients, appearing in the real world as light.
So they're thoughts without shape, like the cocoa. Why do they only appear at night?
They're usually in hiding for fear of the being that destroyed them. And when the moon rises, they feel safe enough to come out. The poor little things. They've already lost their bodies, yet they're still afraid of being destroyed.
Well, yeah. I mean, just because their bodies aren't here doesn't mean their consciousnesses aren't. If an Ender of Worlds failed to fully destroy my people and me, and we were aware that it could possibly come back to finish the job, I'd be terrified too.
They believed in a god even with all of this amazing technology? I didn't expect that.
Faith is an excellent way to shape a group's sense of kinship.
They're also not mutually exclusive. You can believe in a higher power and still have a smartphone.
With no one to return the creatures, the island's ecosystem suffered major disruption. Only a few small insects survived.
Untrue, there's also a seagull that flies over the islands every so often. But see, like, cool little things like that make the world feel more alive. I don't think I was supposed to be able to do that, but you know what? That was pretty cool.
What do you need me to do?
I think our opponent has repurposed the constructs to bolster the distortion's defensive measures. In other words, keep smashing things, and I can start accessing cyberspace again.
I like the direct approach. You can count on me.
See, before, conversations like that were relegated to optional dialogue, but here it's a part of the main story, and what I don't understand is why this conversation happens here. This is the second round we're doing with these characters, and their objectives are virtually the same. Amy visits the Elder and Hermit Coco, Knuckles destroys impact forms, and Tails hacks the Coco devices. Knuckles asked what Tails needed help with, and instead of explaining what's going on, Tails should have just said that they needed to do everything they just did again. Nothing has changed. I find it weird that we're having this conversation now, and not when we started playing as these characters the first time.
You just focus on finding the emeralds with Tails.
Yeah, okay, sure, what the heck is going on?
Yeah, I agree. Why are the trees all pixelated? At least I'm assuming that's what Knuckles is reacting to, because that's all I see.
There's so much we still don't know about this cyber corruption. Why do your punches work when my hammer doesn't?
Well, first of all, it's probably because his fists are attached to his body and your hammer isn't, but second, what are you talking about? You literally have a skill called Psy Hammer where you use your hammer to do a quick Psy loop and you ride it like a broomstick during your cart spin boost. Sure, you don't use it with its intended purpose, but it's not like your hammer doesn't work.
When I get back from this island, I'll use the ancient technology I've obtained here to get the Master Emerald.
What did you just say about the Master Emerald?
Nothing. I wasn't thinking about taking it at all.
Good, because I won't let you lay a finger on the Master Emerald. It's my duty to protect it as the last echidna.
Well, you're doing a banger job right now, Knuckles, what with it being up there on Angel Island all alone. Granted, that's not entirely your fault, but up until recently, you've been leaving Angel Island a lot to just hang out with your friends. I mean, God forbid an echidna have a hobby.
Oh, no, you don't. Sonic handled 4 islands of this mess. I'm not going down to just one.
To be fair, Uranus is a big-ass island, dude. You're also feeling the effects of the cyber corruption all at once, whereas Sonic felt it more and more after each island.
Hope you're hanging in there, Tails.
I'm okay, but the enemy might be recharging their energy. We need to hurry.
Yeah, let's get going, buddy.
Okay, and stop worrying about me and start believing in me.
He can do both, Tails. You know, the way he always does. Just because he worries about you doesn't mean he doesn't believe in you. Hell, your guys' whole plotline in this game was about how much he believes in you. So, another story's optional conversations utilize camera angles or camera distance to obscure the fact that the character's lips aren't moving, and for the most part, go unnoticed. But every now and then you'll get a conversation like this, where we can see Tails' face in all its glory, not animate a damn bit even though he's talking.
As you accumulate points with the pinball, the energy ball gets charged up and opens the door.
Yeah, I figured the device was something like that, since the volcano erupted after I cleared the thing. But why was it designed with a pinball?
That's not exactly clear, but maybe it was just a playful idea on the part of whoever developed it. Engineers tend to be like that.
Right.
Normally, I would bore you with this full conversation for the sake of context that others may not remember, or those who may not even be aware of the context in the first place, but this whole conversation boils down to, why did the thing happen? Because it has the stuff, followed by a bunch of things we didn't ask, which is then answered with, oh, that's why the thing happened, and why it had the stuff.
Go, Tails, go! You can do it!
I'll see this through. I have to.
This was easy. Almost too easy.
Was it? Because you guys are suffering from cyber corruption right now, which not only seems pretty painful, but you also had some trouble figuring out what the Chaos Emeralds were at all.
What's Big doing here? I mean, not that there's anything wrong with just going fishing.
Fishing? If you are talking about the purple portals, those are not real locations. They are a type of cyberspace recreated from your memories.
Isn't that
Picking up any
what cyberspace is, though?
The Big the cat that you saw is most probably an illusion recreated from your memory. The fact that you were able to converse with the illusion and believe it was real speaks of how vivid a memory you have of him. Normally, traveling between spaces is said to cause a feeling of danger at such a level that even you would be able to pick up on it.
Well, it was just big, so it didn't feel dangerous. But it's good to know that the real Big is out there, safe in the jungle somewhere.
Well, that's a relief, but also, I don't buy that explanation for a goddamn second, because Sage is saying that Sonic, much like we all do, has such a vivid memory of Big the Cat that his subconscious must have made him materialize in the purple portals. But if the purple portals don't lead to actual locations, couldn't they lead Sonic literally anywhere? Why did they keep taking him to the same place in cyberspace? Are you telling me that Sonic has a more vivid memory of Big, a character he's only ever met directly literally like 3 times than any other Sonic character? He doesn't have a more vivid memory of Shadow, the guy he saved the world with? Because mind you, Sage never said it had anything to do with comfort or feeling safe. She said it was because of how vivid Sonic's memory of him is. And I guess I don't blame him, for truly Big the Cat leaves an indelible imprint on us all.
I'm gonna hop on that grind rail over there. Care to join me?
So that is how they appear to you.
How they appear? What, don't you see them too?
The current iteration of cyberspace was formed based on your memories. Since linking with it, your memories are now affecting things even outside of cyberspace. As a result of the link, many of the things you see around you are recreations from your memory. It is a testament to how deeply you are linked with cyberspace. I have scanned the area you are pointing to, and my sensors are not picking up anything. To my eyes, there is nothing there.
Does that mean that you don't see the ancient structures either? That cannot be possible. Are you telling me that right now Sonic is just walking on air to you? Are you telling me that Sonic just got hit by nothing? That doesn't make any sense. Also, if the grind rails and springs and all that aren't actually there and are selective physical manifestations of cyberspace based on Sonic's memory, why do they appear the way they do? Their design is unique to this game, but wouldn't they appear the way Sonic remembers them? Are you seriously trying to tell me that Sonic has a more vivid and accurate memory of Big the fucking Cat than he does of the grind rails, dash rings, and springs that he interacts with probably on a daily basis?
Hey, Eggman, you found the emerald yet?
You can't rush genius. And besides, you haven't even finished that tower. What are you waiting for?
Huh, you can't rush Sonic the Hedgehog.
There are literally 2 video games titled Sonic Rush. Also, how the hell are you gonna write that dialogue knowing damn well there is a video game known simply as Sonic the Hedgehog that is one of the most infamously rushed games in history? Not only can you rush Sonic the Hedgehog, they did rush Sonic the Hedgehog.
And now you're a rock in a chair. Yeah, and I'm short on time, so if you want me to save your legacy, you're gonna have to fast-track this new power process.
Sonic, you are being a gigantic asshole to someone whose help you really need in order to save the world right now, and normally they deserve it, but this just feels a little uncalled for. Okay, so this is the second time that I played through another story up until Master King Coco's trial, and both times the loading screen for the trial would get stuck and softlock, meaning I had to restart my game. And unfortunately, this is after a pretty hefty tower challenge that makes it really easy to overlook and forget to save before talking to the Master King Coco, meaning you'll have to climb the tower all over again unless you go out of your way to step on the switch and activate the pulley next to you first. And speaking of the Master King Coco trial, something I hadn't mentioned because it wasn't relevant up until now is that the previous trials are meant to prepare you for this one, and I hadn't noticed that until playing through them a second time. Master King Coco's trial is essentially a boss rush where you have to face all 3 of the titans that you fought up until this point, with the rules explicitly stating that the perfect parry is the only way to parry attacks. The reason that I say that the previous trials are all meant to prepare you for this is because all 4 trials involve fighting enemies that are either easier to defeat when parrying or downright require you to parry in order to defeat them. Dragon's Trial has you facing a squad of Uranus Island soldiers, which are pretty defensive, hitting you with spikes and protecting themselves from your homing attacks, and while you technically don't need to parry them to defeat them, their health depletes much faster if you do and follow up with a Grand Slam rather than trying to attack them directly. Snake's trial has you fighting 4 shells, which, again, you don't need to parry to defeat them, but because your stats are fixed to level 1, attacking it after using the side loop would take too long given the time limit. Instead, you're meant to make each one shoot its shell out as far as they can and then attack them, parrying the shells right before they come back, and repeat until you defeat each one. Tiger's trial has you fighting, ironically enough, a pack of wolves, whom, as far as I know, you need to parry in order to even attack them. And finally, Crane's trial, much like Dragons before it, has you face a ninja, which normally you wouldn't need to parry to defeat, but this one is so fast, parrying is the safest way to fight back. And while I think it's a cool way to foreshadow this last trial, the reason it doesn't exactly work is because during normal play, you can prepare your parry for pretty much as long as you want. One of the tips in this game even says that parrying isn't dependent on timing, just on holding the buttons, but perfect parrying is dependent on timing, and nowhere else in the game introduces this new mechanic to prepare us for this trial. And the reason that's a problem is because you need to fight Giganto, the Wyvern, and the Knight on what's essentially a time limit. Because you fight the Titans as Supersonic, your rings slowly deplete over time, which has been the case for as long as Supersonic's been a thing, but here, not only do you have to fight them all on level 1, meaning the max number of rings you can have is 400, not only do you have to do the pre-battle challenge for each of them, not only do you not have checkpoints during the trial, meaning that if you fail and run out of rings as Supersonic or die as regular Sonic during a pre-battle challenge, you have to start the trial all over again, but you also have to do all of that on one set of rings. That's right! However many rings you have left over at the end of one fight carry over into the next one, and you can't side-loop to get more. There is no way to replenish your ring count in this trial. And while you can't get hurt as Supersonic, if you get hit by one of the Titans, you do enter a recovery phase which just wastes your rings, meaning you have less time to defeat all 3 of them, likely meaning you're going to have to do the trial all over again. Unless you can parry their attacks, which you most likely aren't ready for because this is the first time you're learning to use the perfect parry. And okay, well, just get good, learn how to perfect parry, right? No, see, because when you parry an attack in a video game, when do you expect the parry to activate? When the opponent's attack lands, right? Well, see, the problem is that that's not how it works in this game. Let me use Giganto as an example, right? I can solo this f***er in like 10 seconds because of how many times I had to fight them, but I still could not exactly tell you when to parry their attacks. They have a spin move where they stick their arms out, but if you parry when their arms reach Sonic, you're doing it too early. Instead, you have to wait about a second for their VFX trail to appear, and then the hitbox becomes active. Like, what? And then, when you side-loop them into the air during their second phase, they have a retaliation attack, and you would think, oh, the arm's about to hit me, I should parry. But then they do a complete spin, only hitting you on the second go-around, and it happens so quickly that I'm still not sure what the timing is for it. Sometimes I'd get it, sometimes I wouldn't, and it's because these fights weren't designed with the perfect parry in mind. In the original fights, you could hold the parry, meaning you didn't have to time it. While the opponents do telegraph their attacks, it's hard to know exactly when to parry, not only because the perfect parry is so short, but because the parry window doesn't match the opponent's animation, and there's nothing to indicate when that parry window is. But I'll talk more about that when we get to the next Titan. I got shot into the air, and the camera glitched out, and this happened. Yes, can I help you? What the f do you want from me? Why does the Master King Coco say I'm doing excellent for defeating regular enemies, but didn't say a damn thing when I beat a Titan? The Wyvern can kiss my thick Mexican ass. While not perfect parrying Gigantos and the Knight's attacks does waste your ring count, you can still beat them without having to parry a single time. The Wyvern demands that you master perfect parrying or you will not even be able to hurt it. For starters, you have to parry the missiles it shoots out at you, and here's something else that pisses me off. For some reason, the parry window for projectiles is exactly where you think it should be, when it makes contact. Why are the rules for perfect parrying so inconsistent? Okay, f it, whatever. So you do that, right? Not only can you get hit with a missile that's off-screen, meaning there's no conceivable way you'd be able to time it outside of maybe an audio prompt, but you can still get hit by one of the other missiles after trying to catch up with the Wyvern, who's about to start its attack animation. And oh boy, do I have some shit to say about that one. So even though you're literally redirecting rockets back at it, the missiles don't do any damage to the Wyvern at all. You can't start properly attacking the Wyvern until after you've parried its attack phase, of which it has, as far as I could tell, 5 of them. The first one, after it's been hit with a missile while having over half its health, seems like it's going to hit you with its tail, but nope, it's about to swipe at you, and its wind-up to doing so is so weirdly timed. It wasn't until I fought this thing a bajillion times that someone pointed out to me that there's actually an audio cue for when the attack is about to hit, and I never noticed because during normal play, there's no need for an audio cue because you don't have to time your parry. Okay, so you've successfully parried its first attack phase. Well, unless you want to do it again 3 or 4 times, you need to make sure you have enough Psyloop meter to perform a quick Psyloop, otherwise you'll be doing such piss poor damage that it'll just waste more of your time on top of however many missiles you've gotten hit by or how many attack phases you haven't successfully parried. Okay, so phase 2 starts after you've depleted half its health, and now not only will it shoot out more rockets, but it also emits these laser rings which don't do anything other than clutter the screen with more visual information, making it harder to know which one of the now dozens of rockets you have to parry is. But okay, you successfully parry missile number 2 and enter the Wyvern's second attack phase, where it once again seems like it's going to hit you with its tail, but again swipes at you, except this time there's no wind-up, it just does it all in one quick swoop. And you wanna know the best part? There's no audio cue this time. But hey, you want to know the even better part? Once you successfully parry the first attack, you have to immediately get ready to perfect parry its second attack of this phase, where it swipes in the opposite direction, this time a little slower, throwing your timing off. And in case you were wondering, yeah, that attack doesn't have an audio cue either. In fact, I'm pretty sure that the only attack that the Wyvern even has an audio cue for is its first attack phase. His second one, though, was giving me such a damn hard time because I could not for the life of me figure out what the timing was because it just did not make sense. And then some saint in my chat suggested that I should parry when it begins to swing its arm, not when its claw hits me. And wouldn't you fucking know it? What in the sense does it make to parry an attack so goddamn early and when what's going to hit me is nowhere near me? And this is another thing that I'm talking about when it comes to the opponent's animation not matching my parry window at all. What about this animation communicates to the player that they're supposed to parry the attack when the claw is 10 Sonics away from Supersonic? When I did the attempts of this fight live, I had mentioned that at least for fights where you have to perfect parry, it would be nice if there was a glow or some other kind of visual indicator that tells me roughly when I should time the parry, and someone else had pointed out that technically there was Sonic's Spidey sense. You see, during combat, you might have noticed that Sonic sometimes gets a little line around his head which seems to tether to an enemy. I always thought that little line was telling me which enemy I was focused on in case I wanted to attack, but it turns out that it's meant to activate when you're about to get hit, and a couple of things about that. For starters, I can't even see that shit in this fight, especially not during phase 2 when there's so many things happening on screen, and second, while yes, the little ribbon does alert you to an oncoming attack, it's still not a good indicator of when you're supposed to parry, or even when the attack is going to land. Its only purpose is to alert the player that they're about to get hit in general. But okay, let's say that by some miracle you manage to perfect parry both attacks in its second attack phase. Now you're allowed to start dealing damage again, except now the rules are different. Do not Psyloop the Wyvern on phase 2. If you do, it will break free and retaliate with its third attack phase, where it does a tail whip that you have to, you guessed it, parry in order to avoid getting hit and having to deal with its second attack phase all over again. The problem is, you do so much damage when a Titan is Psylooped, I wouldn't blame anyone who tried to do that because it worked the first time. But okay, you don't Psyloop it and you just start wailing on it, slowly chipping away its health. Well, eventually, regardless of the damage you've inflicted, it's going to retaliate anyway with a fourth attack phase, which is really similar to its third attack phase with the tail whip, except this time it attacks you with a separate part of the tail, making the timing impossible to know. But let's say that by some miracle of God, you managed to perfect parry that attack as well. Now you're given the option to perform a Grand Slam, the thing that I mentioned earlier dealt tremendous damage to enemies. Yeah, don't! Because if you do, you trigger a cutscene where all Sonic does is throw the Wyvern into a wall, does a little bit of damage, nothing all that significant, and then phase 2 restarts. Instead, just wail on it some more. And if you've done enough, the QTE cutscene plays where you can attack it again, but once you do, it will shoot its hyper beam at you, and I have no fucking idea how it was that I managed to perfect parry it on hard mode where the parry animation is 15 frames long or a fifth of a second. because there's zero indication of when the laser beam will hit you. That's how fast it comes out. And you might be wondering, well, why are you doing this on hard mode? The parry is much more comfortable to perform on easy, and the actual answer is out of a sense of pride. I knew I could do it and I wanted to prove I could, but my more facetious answer is because in the base game, you don't fight the true final boss unless you're playing on hard or extreme mode, so why would the player not assume something similar is going to happen in this update? And again, because of how fast the laser is, you probably have to deal with its second attack phase again just to finish it off. All of this is made so much worse by the fact that so many of the things in this fight are designed to waste your time and deplete your rings, but you could get rings back in the original fight. And if you lose all your rings, again, you have to climb Giganto, fight Giganto, climb the tower on Ares Island, and do the ribbon running section every single time all over again. It's so frustrating that you have to be so patient to reattempt a fight that requires patience, but also somehow supersonic reflexes. And even when you do beat the Wyvern part of this trial, you still have to make sure you have enough rings left over to beat the Knight, which is why I got so stupid good at fighting Giganto, because I knew the Wyvern would take a metric load of my rings, which I need to even have a shot at completing this trial. So, in the base game, after defeating Supreme, the End escapes from within it and reforms in space where it was originally sealed, giving Sage enough time to say goodbye to Eggman, commandeer the Titan, and going to face it with Supersonic. Now, for some reason, the End rematerializes almost instantly on the planet. What was different about what we did that caused that? Also, I don't really get why the End is doing this to begin with. It can shoot lasers and create light and dark balls of energy to destroy worlds. Why is it bothering to take control of Supreme? Like, trust me, I remember what I said about the End fight in the base game, and I still stand by it. I still think it's a glorified Toho simulator cosplaying as a final boss, but at least it kind of made sense why we were fighting that incarnation of it. Couldn't we fight that thing and then this thing? The original The End was an awful final boss with a bomb-ass monologue, but it could be a bomb-ass penultimate boss if it was followed up by this as a desperation attempt. That being said, the Supreme End, as I like to call this boss, while a much better final boss, and I do mean a much better final boss, I still have a bunch of issues with it. If I hadn't been live streaming this when I did it for the first time, I have no idea if I would have figured out what to do on my own. You can only do so much damage to the Titan before the End heals itself, and what the game doesn't really tell you is that the Titan isn't really your target. What you're supposed to attack is the End's cord that's connected to Supreme, which is easy enough to deduce, but it's not really obvious that the only way to target the cord is by attacking Supreme's head first and performing a dodge. But why is that what I have to do when the entire cord is visibly accessible from wherever? Another thing that bugs me about this fight is the instances where I have to perfect parry the Supreme End's energy balls. Surprisingly enough, not because the timing doesn't make sense. Like I said, projectiles do get parried upon impact, I just wasn't great at timing it. But no, the problem is when the camera zooms out and Supersonic gets obscured by the forest. I can't parry what I can't see, game. Wait, you guys can fly in your cyber forms? Since when? And why couldn't I do that in the game? Well, except for Tails and the Cyclone, obviously. To continue my complaints about the Supreme End, its next phase starts off with something that looks like a scripted cinematic, but no, I'm actually in control right now and don't realize it because I've never had a camera angle like this that wasn't a scripted event. And what I'm supposed to do is once again attack its head so I can then dodge onto its back and parry its arms. What about Supreme's movements right now would possibly make me think that's what I have to do? And going back to those energy balls real quick, you might notice that every time I get hit by one, my max ring count gets lowered by 10. And during this phase of the Supreme End, a cutscene plays, which is supposed to happen. That's completely normal. But if you have less than 100 rings when it starts, you lose instantly. And I was incredibly confused because that was the first time I'd reached that cutscene and had zero idea what I'd done wrong. Not to mention, you are supposed to lose rings during that cutscene, but when you're playing this for the first time, how are you supposed to know that? And how are you supposed to know that you need at least 100 rings to survive?
Sonic, it's now or never!
As phenomenal as this cutscene is, seriously, I love it so much, why was Sonic's first instinct to go inside the gun? Couldn't Eggman just shoot a laser out of it, or can only Supreme do that? Is it really necessary to shoot Sonic out of the gun? Is it because of how fast he is, making sure he pierced both through Supreme and the End? And why does Sonic need to embrace his cyber corruption for this? As awesome as I think Supersonic Cyber looks, I just don't really understand what the point of him doing this is. Okay, have I just been playing too much of it, or does Supersonic Cyber look like he's trying to do a Five Nights at Freddy's jump scare?
Look! There he is!
God damn. We interrupt the final horizon to bring you the intro to Sonic Unleashed. How many times can a hedgehog bust his ass falling from space before he starts to really feel it? Oh yeah, I guess I should mention the reward you get for 100% completing this game. You get a crown. It's like Kingdom Hearts. Cool. Hey everyone, CharI5 here. Thanks so much for watching my CinemaSins pastiche of everything wrong with Sonic Frontiers: The Final Horizon. What a way to end the story of Sonic Frontiers. I was amazed at what they decided to go with for the ending. I'd like to thank my biggest supporters on Patreon and my channel members. On screen you're seeing the names of the awesome people who decide to contribute financially every month. I invite you to do as well by hitting the link in the description or by hitting the join button underneath this video. If you can't, that's perfectly fine too. I would really appreciate, the like, the sharing, the commenting, all the good stuff to get engagement. And to, let more people know that, if you like Sonic, here's something that you might enjoy as well. If you haven't watched CinemaSins, go watch them too. They have a lot of other sister channels that host, music videos, brands, other topics. Question of the video: what Starfall Island's Titan is your favorite? I think that for me, it has to be the Knight, just because I think that he has a really cool design, and he's got like the giant anime sword, and the music is fantastic. I think the Knight is really, really cool. But I'd love to know what your thoughts are and why. Yeah, check out my other videos if you haven't already. Recommend them to a friend if you think they might enjoy content like mine or similar. And I will see you guys in the next video. Until then, stay safe and stay awesome. This is CharI5, signing off. And that's another ew. Good job. Thank you, thank you. And to you too. Good job on the brand deal. Thank you, thank you. You alright? Yeah, just tired, but what else is new? So, what's next? Well, Mario and Sonic come out sometime in a couple weeks, which kind of sucks because I was really looking forward to doing the rest of FNAF, and I still haven't found anyone to help me with the Pokemon stuff. Or everything wrong with. When was the last time you worked on the project? I don't have time to work on the project. Why do you ask? You're the one that's always telling me to get back to the video stuff. Well, because, it's our passion. We started it before we started any of this. Yeah, but we started that when we were a kid, and we can't focus on it right now. I'm not saying focus on it, I don't know, nurture it. Do you remember when we were a kid and we really, really wanted a soundproof room so we could do our voice recordings in, particularly for stuff like the project, even though all we had was a cheap USB mic that we didn't want to admit wasn't great? I guess I'm just proud of us is all. We got there eventually. Yeah. I really do like our office.